Careers in educational leadership are normally sequential and cumulative, beginning for most with classroom teaching and moving through the ranks of department head, vice principal, principal, superintendent, or ministry official, or professor. Individuals are prepared through various courses of study, including teacher education and graduate study. Our guests today, Superintendent Tom Grant and Assistant Superintendent Maureen Dockendorf of School District 43, Coquitlam, exemplify such backgrounds. Our goal is to demonstrate in our discussion the thought process such education leaders bring to current issues in our schools by engaging them on two topics of interest in school reform circles: early childhood education and the professional development of educators. We welcome Tom and Maureen to discuss these issues today on Your Education Matters. Tom, we're familiar with the term professional development. We hear it all the time in talking about education. But today we'd like for you to go into depth with us a little bit about what it really means for teachers and administrators. So would you give us the lay of the land a bit on professional development for educators?
Sure, I'd love to. I'm lucky enough to be in a district where, as a team, we operate on the premise that our schools or our district can only be as effective as the competence of the teachers and the professional staff within those schools. And so to support that premise, we have organized a menu of opportunities to support professional growth for all of our employees. And in a minute we can talk about that menu, but they're as diverse as the needs of the professionals in our organization, and are again focused on ensuring that we provide the best possible education for every child in that district. And some of the opportunities in that menu include traditional professional development opportunities where we as educators can go and learn about new topics, add to our knowledge inventory, and in others, mainly through the work of Maureen and the other assistants, we have developed over time a learning team format in which teachers in collaboration with administrators, and teachers, administrators, and superintendents in collaboration are looking at topics and looking at them in depth and looking for ways to apply that learned knowledge to the current situation that we serve in. So we have really looked at how to take a concept like professional development and personalize it for all of those professionals in our schools.
Well, right away you've piqued my interest, because one of the things we know about teaching is it tends to be a solitary enterprise.
Right.
You're certainly always there with students, but you're rarely there with other adults in the room. So the notion of a team, I think, could bear some exploration. Maureen, maybe you could come in and talk with us a little bit about the team concept of in professional development.
I'd be pleased to. So about 7 years, we took what we know really has the potential to make a difference for professional learning, and that would be all embracing the notion not only of team, but also of inquiry. And we have worked with action research groups. So basically, when we're talking about learning teams, we're talking about action research groups where educators figure out what it is that they want to improve in their own practice. They come together as a team, and they inquire into their own instruction, most of the time, classroom instruction, figure out what piece they want to improve on and work on it. So these teams are about between 10 and 12. They meet at least 6 times a year, 6 to 8 times a year. And we are extremely fortunate in Coquitlam because our Board of Trustees has really prizes this, this structure of professional development. And so there's release time attached to these learning teams. So half the time, teachers are on their own time, and half the time they're supported by release time. And every one of those teams has a trained facilitator. So they meet 6 to 8 times during the year, working on some aspect of their own practice. I think the power, Paul, is they own it. So they decide what it is that they want to work on. It's all voluntary. They decide whether they want to belong. Some of these teams have been going 7 years. And if you ask anyone, they'll tell you that is because of the ongoing nature of it, because they own it, because teachers or administrators are making decisions about what they want to work on, what they want to improve in their practice. It's a very powerful form, I believe, of professional development.
I read the book, The Teaching Gap, a few years ago by Stigler and Hebert, and the part that I'll never forget is the description of the Japanese study lessons, where Japanese teachers habitually come together and they divide up the curriculum, and their goal is to work out a perfect lesson for each day of the week, and they divide up the units, they observe each other, they polish one another's lessons. It's very alien to what we've become used to
Yes.
in the Anglo world or the North American education world, but I see elements of that in what you're talking about, introducing collaboration among professionals into the professional development experience. So is there resistance at some level to this? Because it is a departure from tradition.
Sure. Well, I think you have to bear in mind what Maureen has said, and it is these learning teams are built around people examining their own practice, and so there's no compulsion to belong. And so it is an invitation to practitioners to come together as teams to look at their own practice, to try and figure out, as Maureen said, what parts or what elements of our practice we need to improve. Then we also, through the facilitators and through whatever structures we can, support people to go back and help each other in their classroom, in their school. Luckily, most of the teams that come together are people from the same staff. And so they get a chance. Maureen says they meet 6 to 8 times. That's formally. Informally, I'll bet you they're meeting every day. And so they really do support each other in that individual growth, but it's within a collaborative process.
And you've been doing this for 7 years?
Yeah, we started 7 years ago, and we actually had to go and find people. Please come and be part of this, and be part of it and see if it works. Tell us what works. Tell us what we need to change. So we started by actually going and inviting people to come and just saying, just give us a chance on this structure around learning teams.
And where did the idea come from?
Well, actually, I'd been really fortunate enough when the implementation of the year 2000 was in. So we managed to convince the government at that time that if you really want to figure out if it's working, primary program in particular, you really need action research groups of primary teachers. So I've been working in action research along with my mentor for sure, Peter out of SFU, right? So action research, teacher research has been a passion of mine, and I just have a fabulous job around the portfolio of staff development. So we started there, and we started with 2 or 3 teams that we begged to come together. And I can tell you, we are so proud. We had over 70 teams this year.
Oh, my.
Yeah, so over 70 teams and about 765 educators.
Well, I know that both as a public school teacher and as a college faculty member, one of my frustrations was that I never had enough opportunity for people who were qualified to evaluate what I was doing to see it. So that gets, gets frustrating sometimes. Your primary mission is the students, but you'd like at times for your peers to see what you're doing and to help you, but also to give you a pat on the back if you put a lot of effort in and you're doing something above the norm. So this came in partly through university influence, and you're mentioning words like action research and inquiry. So maybe we need to talk about knowledge mobilization a little bit and how what you're doing is connected to research and inquiry in education and the whole knowledge utilization and mobilization efforts that have been being put forth in Canada.
When you look at, and I'll just use the learning teams as a platform, one of the issues we face is how do you take the knowledge that a group of professionals develops, grows, learns, and how do you expand that so that they get an opportunity to share it with other practitioners? And I think that has always been one of the problems in education. We have not really found ways to collect, gather, and spread the knowledge we have learned to other people. One of the issues I think that we face and will continue to face is how do we combine what we learn in practice with what you and other university professors learn through their individual research And, you know, quite frankly, what kids learn too. I mean, we've got to look at what all of our partners learn about the process of teaching and learning. And I don't think yet we've come up with a way to disseminate that appropriately, to spread that kind of knowledge through our organization or yours. And I think that's one of the critical elements that we face as a profession. How do we share the knowledge about really good practice? And I think good practice is a better term than best practice. I get a little irate sometimes when I hear best practice because so much of our work is contextualized. And so how do you really take what works in context A, learn about it, apply it to context B, play with it, and see what it'll do in context C. So I don't think we've examined or found the vehicle to do that yet, Paul, and that's a problem.
It's an infinitely challenging profession because it's practiced with groups of people. I'm always reflecting on, you know, to what extent our profession's practiced on groups as opposed to individuals. So you're always working to some imagined norm, and you're trying to catch the outliers in what you're doing. I'm wondering, Maureen, if you could take us to the next level of specificity and talk about an example of something that's been implemented through the learning teams, some reform that's taking hold in the curriculum or the instructional methods so people could get a better idea of what change occurs.
Well, I think one of the things that's really struck me this year is a group of early learning teachers. So that would be kindergarten and K1 teachers, right? And with the implementation of full day K and a real shift in the pedagogy of early learning. So what they've been examining is how do you shift from what we commonly call theme-based teaching. How do you make that shift from theme-based teaching and driven by prescribed learning outcomes to a curriculum that is emergent? So where in the center is not the curriculum and the prescribed learning outcomes, but rather in the center is the kids and the interest of the kids and the passions of the kids and what it is that they want to figure out. And that has been a really difficult shift for many of us in early learning. So we've been exploring that this year. Well, so at the center is that emergent curriculum. And yes, we are absolutely cognizant of prescribed learning outcomes, but honestly, that's not what's driving us. And what's driving us is the interests of those kids and the passions of those children, and how do you uncover curriculum rather than cover it. So that's been the inquiry in that early learning group of professionals this year. And it's ongoing, and we're pretty excited about it.
It's a wonderful statement about the place of creativity and inspiration in the classroom. I'm sure we're all glad to hear that there is a place for it right in the center of the classroom experience with the children. We'll be back in just a moment.
For more than 40 years, the Faculty of Education at SFU has been delivering academic programs that are innovative and responsive. Based on the academic research of our professors and the expertise of practicing teachers from your communities, our programs are designed to meet classroom needs. As a community, we're piecing together a successful education experience for students today and in the future.
People around the province know that there's a major expansion in early learning opportunities taking place, and we'd like to use School District 43, Coquitlam, as a case study in this. What are you doing now in response to the province's efforts in early learning?
Well, I think the province gave us a great foreshadowing about 2 years ago. So we work with Mission School District, a rural district and an urban district, and we came together. We've been colleagues for a long time, and we learn from one another, urban and rural, and we came together and created an early learning working group. And always in our pedagogy, in our practice in our district, we care very much that we have they're usually academics, wonderful academics who inform our practice. So we're working with an early learning working group, and we started about 1.5 years ago, and two fabulous people who really push us to think differently about early learning. So we started, as I said, 1.5 years ago, and we're ready for a full day kindergarten and very excited about it. So there'll be 50% of our students this fall entering into full day classrooms. Where we're heading now, we see full day K as one aspect of what we are passionately focused on, and it's our vision, and that's a framework, a seamless framework for children from 0 to 8. And by that I mean that it minimizes their transitions when they come to school at, take Ontario, where we're watching what's happening there, coming to school at 7 or 7:30, dropped off 4 and 5-year-olds in the kindergarten room with early childhood educators. The teacher comes in, the children are not moving. So their day is seamless, even their after-school care. So our big picture, where we're heading, is 0 to 8 framework around seamless learning, of which full-day K is one part.
This is one area where I find myself agreeing with the economists who observe education, which is a rarity for me because they're also strong advocates of early learning, pre-kindergarten. Tom, would you talk a little bit about why we have this consensus from so many disparate quarters on the value of early learning?
I think fundamentally it's an agreement that our children are our best resource. And I think if you operate from that perspective, people are looking for the best ways to organize structures that properly support the growth and development of young children. I think economists approach it from the perspective of pluses and minuses, and I think if you look at what value a healthy, productive young child can grow into, you get a sense that proper work at an early childhood development phase of growth and development pays off hugely when we become adults. And I think all of us are looking at the growth of citizens, the growth of appropriate citizens, and that only comes from a really strong foundation. And I think we can all agree on that.
And who will deliver these services? Will they be regular certified teachers or some combination of teachers and other professionals, Maureen?
Well, at this particular point in time, delivering the full-day kindergarten absolutely will be teachers. What we're noticing and observing in Ontario is they have in their kindergarten classes, as of this fall, 15% of the kindergarten classes in Ontario will have an early childhood educator working alongside a kindergarten teacher. I mean, I just cannot. I taught kindergarten and had 25, 26 in a classroom. Just imagine having another adult in there, which brings the ratio to 1 to 13. And think about the collaboration between those two people. So we're really watching and observing Ontario and definitely have a lot to learn from them.
As we start laying more foreground before first grade, was there any new effort to let children move into first grade based more on readiness instead of calendar age?
No. So far, we have not changed the fundamental transitions. What we're looking at is seamless development, but so far we're not pushing kids to accelerate their academic learning. And I think when you look at the work that we're doing in developing play-based curriculum for full-day kindergarten, I don't see any need to accelerate the academic learning at this point.
You're assuming accelerate, but I might be thinking decelerate. Maureen, research tends to say that boys aren't as ready as girls at the same calendar age in this time frame. Are we going to continue as we have in the past, sticking with calendar age regardless of gender?
Well, actually, my perspective is these are children, and we welcome them in developmentally wherever they are. And actually, it's my job as a teacher, right, to know those children individually and to be putting all kinds of opportunities, learning opportunities in place for each and every individual kid as well as the collective. So for me personally, and having taught it for 9 years, it never mattered, Paul. My job is to welcome them in, to make sure that they have a joy of learning, that they're excited about being there, and that they're passionately trying to figure something out because, you know, they are our future. These are our citizens of the world.
Well, I have a bias because I was a kindergarten dropout.
You should have been in my class.
Well, I don't know. I had a wonderful teacher, but I was pretty young, and I would get under the bed most mornings and try to avoid going to the kindergarten. So
there are some of us that need to play with rocks and scratch in the dirt, and I understand fully what you're saying.
It's a wonderful service, especially to families that would like enriched the experience of their children. There's so much that's accomplished in these early years. I mean, nobody can really put a measure on it, but in my own experience as a parent and as a teacher, I think so much of the groundwork is laid down before 4 years old. Now, how will the feel of early learning differ from first grade? What do we look for in an early learning experience in a pre-kindergarten or a kindergarten that's different in nature from the way first grade feels?
Well, honestly, I'd change grade 1 to look more like kindergarten. So, you know, truly, I mean, in our early learning environments, right, and that's inclusive of grade 1 and grade 2, right, at the heart of all of this needs to be a pedagogy of play. And play and learning through play, not free play, not go do whatever you want, but really, and that's where the teacher's expertise absolutely comes into play. Being able to observe these young learners, paying attention to what kind of provocations I could put in the environment to challenge their thinking. And when you think about it, these children that are coming in, we don't even know the jobs they'll have when they graduate from high school. So we know what it is we need to be nurturing: curiosity, creativity, metacognition, and clearly at the heart of it, self-regulation. So, which really looks at curiosity, sticking to a task when it's tough to do, getting along with others, collaboration. Those are the kind of skills that these children are going to need in the future, and that's what we need to be nurturing.
There is another point of view out there, though. I think, Tom, I remember when my daughter was nursery school age, the choice in the town I was in was between graded and ungraded nursery schools. So there is a school of thought that kindergarten and preschool should be rigorous. There should be skills laid down that are very specific, related to manipulation of symbols. Do you have the freedom to organize your early learning the way Maureen has described? Are you under pressure to make kindergarten more like grade 0, I call it, sure, instead of grade 1, more like kindergarten?
I think when you look at any venture, you're going to have a range of opinions on what that venture should look like. And I'm sure in our community we will have teachers, we will have parents who will expect us to be doing grade 0. I think our job will be to come together and really make sure we're all on the same page. We're looking at, and as Maureen has suggested, we've got an opportunity in early learning to really help students become self-regulated, self-focused young learners. And I'll guarantee you that if we give them those skills, that they can catch up to grade 0, 1, and 2 pretty quickly. And we have this one opportunity, and I think we're going to make the best of it in helping these learners be ready for the rigors of an academic curriculum when it shows up.
Well, again, for the sake of people who aren't professional educators, could we be a little specific about if we walked into one of these classrooms, what we would see, what sort of activities and manipulables and instructional techniques? Could you talk about that for us?
Absolutely. So we'll have to invite you to come and do a show in one of our, what we're calling, early learning labs. So in Coquitlam, and I'd also like to say, I haven't always agreed with the pedagogy of the ministry. When it comes to early learning, I am really pleased to tell you that we are backed by the research around early learning, around brain development, and the ministry's embraced this. So for once, we're all talking the same language. So that's pretty exciting. So we don't have that pushback. In our early learning labs, and I do call them labs, I don't call them demonstration classrooms, we're trying to figure out the best pedagogy for early learning, and these are going to be places where we'll demonstrate that. So the furniture even looks different. So we have purchased furniture that is far more flexible in nature. So for example, you'll see a bench that seats 3 children. The bench can turn on a side and become a river. It can tip up like this and become the puppet theater. It can turn another way and become a cave. So again, building on what I said around fostering creativity and curiosity. So even the materials in there are far more flexible. A chair can only be a chair, whereas these benches can turn into whatever children can imagine. My job as the teacher is to set up provocations, we're calling them, right? That really push you to think differently, to ask the questions there that really push the learning. And then my job also as that teacher is to document it. So you'll see documentation in video, documentation in photos, and then I'm writing about the learning of your child. So there'll be whole group instruction, small group instruction. Kids will make wise, independent choices. My job is to set up that environment. The environment is also critically important. Are numeracy skills part of this and are literacy skills part of it? Absolutely. Are they being taught out of context? For example, today is letter A. The answer is no. In my vision of the classroom, it's absolutely literacy and numeracy skills are taught there through those provocations. So you're just going to have to bring your cameras and come and see.
Well, we'll take you up on that invitation. I want to thank you both for your very informative words for us today. And it sounds like things are happening in Coquitlam in just the way we'd like to see in education. Thank you. We'll be back in a moment. A major goal of this program is to invite you, the public, to get to know teachers and other education professionals in BC. We have this goal because we think that education policy should be made in open settings with careful attention to the professional opinions of educators. We think as you get to hear these educators' perspectives, your confidence in them will continue to rise. Without their input, we are subject to suffering unintended consequences even as we seek school reform. A case in point is our accountability efforts in BC that lead to high-stakes, invalid school rankings, narrowing of the curriculum, and insensitivity to the impact of child poverty on school success. Only if the voices of veteran educators are prominent in our discussions of education policy will we have a chance at developing insightful programs of reform that advance school success for all students, whatever their talents and interests. Teachers are among our very most trusted professionals. They have earned this status because they blend knowledge based on research and scholarship with a humane and caring attitude. Thank you for watching. Your Education Matters.